Want to pass something out to us? Sure, well, if you've got it, we'll read it.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. How you been?
Good.
Good, thank you, thank you.
So, Mr. Swan, if you want to tell the people at home your name and address, and
Sure.
we'll be happy to hear from you.
Thank you. Jeff Swan, I live at 132 Franklin Street in Clinton, Massachusetts. Good evening. I'm here to point out what I think is an oddity or perhaps an anomaly in the subcommittees. In a quick review of the subcommittees and the information published on the Clinton MaGov site, the subcommittees typically meet on a monthly or bi-monthly basis. The Clinton MaGov website shows a meeting history back to July of 2015. As an example, the Retirement Committee has met 46 times since July of 2015, as of the end of February 2019. In addition to the comparison, the Marketing and Communication Committee, which has only existed for a couple of years, has met 5 times since its inception. Its first meeting is listed as September 17th, 2017. However, the committee that seems at odds with the standard is the Cable Committee. Starting at the earliest date available on the Clinton Gov site, the Cable Committee is in roughly 3.5 years has met 4 times, or a meeting a year. Given the impact that town cable has in contributing to the status and presentation of any town, this seems at odds with the general theme to advance Clinton as a desirable and growing locale. Clinton is 50% larger than both the towns of Sterling and Lancaster, yet both of these towns boast a public station website, a TV studio, and 2 public access channels. Clinton has none of the above. Committee members for this subcommittee are an interesting group. We have Selectman Mark Iacobucci, Selectman Sean Carrigan, Town Council Robert Gibbons, Town Administrator Michael Ward, and Charlie Crook. Unfortunately, I can find no information on Charlie Crook. With the exception of Mr. Crook, the committee is made up completely of Town Administrator insiders, so I'm assuming that scheduling a meeting would not be a challenge. I can find no meeting minutes, so there's no public way to track what happens at the meetings or even to validate attendance. However, in contrast to this low-key approach to managing the town's access channel, I believe the Comcast contract is quickly coming upon us. Given the impact and the money involved in negotiating with Comcast, it would seem at odds that no meetings are being held to review or present to the public the committee's plans. We are all striving for a better Clinton. It is my personal belief with regards to attracting business, local assets like TVs, websites, social media, and parking is what will separate the dying backwaters from the thriving small towns. I present this anomaly in hopes of better understanding what appears to be a very casual consideration of this very important part of Clinton, and hopefully to find out what is being done to ensure the prosperity of Clinton's local TV. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Swan.
You're welcome.
Next item on the agenda is the review of the minutes for January 23rd, 2019. What's the pleasure of the board with regard to the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for January 23rd, 2019.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the minutes for January 23rd, 2019. Is there any discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
And before we proceed, I should say we're going to observe a moment of silence. Mrs. Mary McIntyre. My eyes are going, even though I knew the name. Mrs. Mary McIntyre died very recently, and we'd wish to. She was a teacher in the Clinton Public Schools for many years, and so we would like to observe a moment of silence in her memory. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is Public Works issues. Mr. McGowan.
Right.
And the first one we've got is Chapter 9, Road Construction Design for Berlin and Greeley Streets.
Yeah, and I apologize, there are a few typos on the Greeley Street. They didn't change the kind of the first paragraph on there, so what I'm planning on doing here is I want to get some design work done. These are 2 fairly major roads in town. Berlin Street obviously is one of the 3 or 4 ways into town, Greeley Street leads right to the hospital and the St. John Cemetery, and they're both fairly well-traveled roads, and they're both in disrepair. Berlin Street was paved actually back when Albufaro did the subdivision or the condo complex up there. The top course of pavement is peeling off. There are some other problems there are other areas that are a little bit more in disrepair, so what I would recommend there, what we're probably gonna do is a mill and overlay with some spot full depth reconstruction. After we do the mill work, we'll look and do full depth where it's needed. We wanna do curbing and probably, my plan is concrete sidewalks, and similarly on Greeley Street, that's a total rehab. That road is pretty much gone, but we do, I think both of these roads warrant, sidewalks and concrete curbing and granite curbs, or not concrete curb, concrete sidewalks. So my plan is to use some Chapter 90 money to do the design, so hopefully we'll be in a position where, we could possibly use some of the infrastructure stabilization fund to fund some of these projects. Trying to get ahead a little bit on our design work so that once we do have this money available, we have to have one more, we have to have a bylaw at the next town meeting that allows us to spend that money, and we'll be proposing that at the next town meeting. But we do have Chapter 90 money, which is where I'd like to take the money to complete these two designs.
Okay. What's the pleasure of are there any questions from members of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the consultant design.
I'll second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the Chapter 90 road construction design for Berlin and Greeley Streets. Is there any discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed, motion's carried. And then there's a landfill design and engineering contract amendment for Brown and Caldwell.
Yeah, Brown and Caldwell is our design engineer for the landfill project and the pond dredge project. We've been doing with them is extending their contract yearly to cover what we believe will be the cost for that next year. So last year, the bulk of the money went to, we did a risk assessment on the pond to try to once and for all delineate the final dredge footprint. We're still waiting to hear back from the DEP on what that is. And we also spent quite a bit of money on the waste relocation, which was a pretty big effort that we hired a contractor to remove all the waste that was on railroad property, fill it back in. And then while we were there, we also built the access road, which is required for the final cap, and built the swale that'll convey all the runoff around the landfill. So next year, on top of all the there are a lot of quarterly reporting we have to do. There's landfill monitoring we have to do. So all that is covered in this. And the other portion in here would be to continue with the pond dredge design. So the next phase of that will be actually applying for and hopefully getting permits within the next year, I really hope. And also the final cover on the landfill, whatever portion of that we do, they have to do the site overlay for that. So that's what this change order is for. And there'll be another one next year until we're done with the project.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to authorize the extension of the contract with Brown and Caldwell.
I'll second.
Motion's made and seconded to amend the landfill design and engineering contract for Brown and Caldwell, and this is basically an extension of that contract. There any discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed, motion's carried. And Sterling Property Timber Sale, consultant proposal from Bay State Forestry. So this is for the Weeki-Peeki, I take it?
This is for the property out of the Weeki-Peeki. A few years back, the state, you all realize, that we have a conservation restriction on that land. Part of that conservation restriction was that in order to do any timber harvesting or basically anything out there, we had to have a forest management plan. So a few years back, the state got some money and actually completed a forest management plan for us. So we have a completed, approved forest management plan. The company that did the forest management plan is this Bay State forestry services. So what I'm proposing is that we have them go out and they'll go out and actually mark trees, and they'll put together a forest cutting plan. So a cutting plan, so a contractor can then be hired to harvest some of the mature timber. And it really is, it's good for the environment of the property, and it will also generate some revenue for the town. What my hope is, I mean, I don't know how much lumber we're gonna get out of this and how much cordwood or whatever, but once we get an idea of how much it is, my plan is to start using some of that money to start doing some of the work on the dams. The dams are, they're all in poor condition. Every year, twice a year, we have to go out and do a dam assessment. They're quite expensive. So it's time to decide what we're gonna do with those dams, whether we take some of them out, rehab some of them. Not really 100% sure yet. I think the Haywood would be a very difficult one to remove. Some of the other smaller impoundments, it makes perfect sense to remove them. I'm actually working with the state. There's another department of the state, ecological restoration, and they're actually gonna spend some money this year, starting now, to go out and kind of assess all the dams and assess how much of an ecological benefit it would be to remove the dams. And they're also looking into what kind of grant programs are out there that we might be able to apply for. You know, they base the grants for removal of the dams on, you know, what's the value of the restoration once you do that work. And, you know, first glance, I went out and walked all the sites with him. He thinks it would be, you know, would score very highly. So what I'm hoping to do is at least 3 of the dams to remove them, and then we don't have to do any more, we don't have to go out and assess them anymore and spend money kind of foolishly. So that's the plan, but this is, you know, a way to generate a little bit of money so we can keep that ball rolling forward, and hopefully grants will take care of most or if not all of the dam removal work. So.
Okay. Any questions from members of the board?
I just think it's a good idea that, you know, if we're gonna be taking those trees out of there, you know, generating revenue, and to use that revenue for maintenance of the dams up there. I think it's a good idea. Thank you, Chris. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. More of a comment, anything.
Has anybody had any contact with the town of Sterling, who I'm sure would be?
No.
We're
I
not,
mean, this is the first step to
we're
go out.
not cutting anything yet, but I mean.
We're not, no, this gentleman, actually, part of his job will be to contact the Conservation Commission to let them know what we're doing. So that will actually be part of his scope to go to, when you put the plan together, you're required to go to the conservation. You're not necessarily required to get an order of conditions, because this type of work, I believe, is exempt from the wetlands
Right.
protection laws. But they are required to, you know, contact them and let them know what
Notify.
we're
Yeah.
planning, so.
But I mean, just as sort of a courtesy, did you have a counterpart in,
Yes.
Stuart? Maybe you could give them a call and
Sure.
say,
Yeah.
we're just looking at, we're getting a consultant to look at the land to see what's there. And
Right, I think just I wanted to just mention, Mr. Chair, if I could, that this is a scope of services to put together a proposal. This company did a forestry management plan, and now it would be a scope of services as to how much work would be done. It would come back to the board to
Right,
determine
right.
how much to be done. But it is something we've talked over the years, and even the state has indicated that a thinning of that forest is good for,
Yeah.
you know, to keep the healthy growth in the underbrush, to try to keep it
Right.
from getting too
Yeah.
irrelevant.
Yeah, well, you don't
forestry
want all old growth in the forest. You want to have some younger stuff to be able to grow, but when there's a huge canopy over it, the young stuff underneath really doesn't have a chance to grow. So they thin it, and they thin it, you know, based on recommendations from the Fish and Wildlife. So it's it's a good thing for the environment, and a good thing for the forest out there.
Yeah, and
It's
it's a good-
500 acres of beautiful land.
Yeah,
you know.
it's a good thing for the wildlife too, because a fully mature, believe it or not, but a fully mature forest doesn't support much in terms of wildlife, because it's all canopy.
Dense, I mean, it's very dense populated.
But I mean, I think out of, just a sense of courtesy, we should let the
Agreed.
people in Sterling know that this is.
Yeah, Ross Perry is the town administrator there, so I
Yeah,
can,
just give them a call and say, explain what we're doing. Any other questions? There being none, what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we grant the proposal to Bay State Forestry to develop a scope of services for the Weeki Peaky.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the timber sale consultant proposal from Bay State Forestry. Is there any discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed, motion's carried. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Administrative business. We have a town hall, excuse me. We have a town hall use event request for Fallon Memorial Auditorium for the Old Home Days to be held Friday, September 6th, 2019, and Saturday, September 7th, 2019. What's the pleasure of the board?
So move, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the town hall use events for the Old Home Days Committee. Is there any discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed, motion's carried. Next item is the water sewer trash abatements. The Superintendent of Public Works has submitted a list of water sewer trash abatements in the amount of $13,180.29 from the last billing cycle for action by the board. What's the pleasure of the board?
Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the water and sewer and trash abatements. Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the abatements in the amount of $13,180.29. Is there any discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed, motion's carried. We have a request for an amusement device license, and that is from Tees Liberty Tavern, and they are requesting an automatic amusement device license for the addition of a pool table on the property located at 301 High Street. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the amusement device license for T Liberty's Tavern on High Street. Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the amusement device for Tees Liberty Tavern. Is there any discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Motion's carried. That takes us, I believe, into new and old business. And the first item of business is the paramedic study, consultant proposals. I'll turn that over to Michael so he can go over it and summarize it for us.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to bring to the board's attention just the two proposals we received relative to the paramedic study for an EMS review of the Clinton Fire Department. We had a little bit of difficulty getting proposals. I think it's kind of a specialized study that we're looking for here. I know we had some people inquiring whether it was a wage or wage type study. I think in looking that it's really a management proposal to try and look at whether or not it's something we can sustain that type of service here in Clinton. So we did a couple of rounds of advertising, and we were able to get two proposals. One is from the Matrix Group Consulting. It's a nationwide consulting company based out of California, and also from the Center for Public Safety Management, which is a wing of the ICMA, which is the National Town Administrators Association out of Washington, D.C. So the only issue, they both seem to have been fairly involved in this type of work. The difference is one is just a little bit less than $20,000 more than the other one. And one is under the proposed budget for town meeting, and one is over. So, you know, looking at that initially, it's a big number to kind of guide, I think, the decision, unless, you know, we feel that the one company is hugely more qualified than the other. I did submit these proposals to the fire chief for review as well, too. So I haven't spoken to either company, so whether or not the company that's more expensive is able to maybe negotiate their fee a little bit, if it's something that we feel we would like to entertain. But at this point, you know, my initial look at it is kind of looking at the, and not solely, I mean, obviously, we want it done right and with a good firm, but Matrix is a very reputable consulting firm, and they were much cheaper than the other, so. So it's not something that the board, would need some more time to review, and if you would like me to speak to the two companies, we don't need to know exactly tonight. We did give them a 60-day schedule so that we could have some information for the board during the budget process to determine whether it's something the board wanted to proceed with. I know the fire department, if the town does go down this route, it's something that's gonna be phased in anyways. It's not gonna be done immediately or right July 1 right away. But I think they were kind of hoping to, this year, to at least get a sense of whether it's something we're gonna pursue, and we could start putting a plan together, put a plan in place. It would take, once the town decides to go for licensing from the state, it would take up to 36 months in order to fully implement, to get the service fully running at that point. So it's something that I think, hopefully we would do in phases to make sure we do it and get it right when we do go forward, if it's something the board decides. I think by having this study done this spring, it gives the board the information to make that decision on what path to go, but it's not gonna be flipping the switch come July 1. So if it's something the board wanted to, get more information for the next meeting, or if you review the proposals and something that you wanted to proceed with, now it's fine.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I've only been able to scan the proposals, but one is within our budget and one is not. And I think Mike has said that both groups are capable of doing what we need done.
Right.
So unless the board wants to wait, I'd make a motion to award the contract to Matrix Consulting Group so we can get the ball rolling on this and finding out
I'll second.
how this is gonna affect the town.
Okay, are there any other questions? Well, we've got a motion and a second, so we'll say the motion's made and seconded to award this contract to the Matrix Consulting Group for $39,500. There has been a second. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just either a point of clarification, or I just want to make sure I'm understanding this. The other company also, I'm seeing a total lapse time of 105 to 145 days. So that's, even if they could cut it, even if we could reach their number, it seems like they'd have to cut their schedule in half to get to
Right,
our
that's
60
something that would
days.
have to be negotiated, you're right,
Right.
yes, because the proposal asked for 60
Right.
days, and they gave us a longer schedule with a higher budget, so. And I'm sure everything is negotiable, but whether they have the staff resources to do that, I don't know. But you're right, that's a good point.
And sticking with Matrix, getting to that 60-day number, they did say that it would require an aggressive effort on our part. Are you confident that we can hit the milestones that they're looking for as far as sharing information?
Right.
You think we can do that?
Yep, I believe so. I think the fire department is committed to this, and it's just a matter of getting their run numbers and all the data, contracts that we have for our current ALS private service right now. So I know that the Chief Lutz and Deputy Seibert has been very committed to trying to get this ball moving. So I know that they'll put in whatever efforts needed to get the information, and myself as well too. I mean, certainly a lot of the criteria that we reviewed, it's questions that I had asked, and discussions that I'm more than happy to have with the consulting group to make sure that they're addressing all these needs. We can get them the financial data that we have now that we're looking at other, whatever funding sources we have. Talked about maybe a meals tax, or that was newly instituted, so now at least we have some history of that. Starting in October 1st, we'll have at least 2 quarters of history as to how much is coming in on that. So whatever we need on the town hall end, I'm committed to doing, and I know that Chief Lutz and Deputy Seibert will do the same.
Great.
Any further discussion? There being none, all in favor of
Aye.
the
Aye.
motion? And all opposed? Motion's carried.
Thank you.
Mass Trails Grant Letter of Support. The Clinton Greenway Conservation Trust is requesting a letter of support from the town of Clinton for their application to the Mass Trails Grant Program to conduct an inspection and evaluation of the 1,000-foot tunnel on Department of Conservation and Recreation property in Clinton, to determine the feasibility of including the tunnel in the Mass Central Rail Trail. So that's pretty self-explanatory. If people have ever been up to that tunnel, it's been abandoned for many years. It's, if you walk into it, there's always water dropping on your head. The floor and everything is pretty wet. And there is some concern on the part of the Clinton Greenway Trust as to its safety and whether they want to buy it. I mean, because they don't want to buy it and include it in the rail trail if it's determined that it is ready to fall down. So they have applied for a grant to inspect the tunnel, and I, earlier in the week, because they had to have something for the 1st of February, wrote a letter personally endorsing the project, but they would like us to endorse it as a board. So what is the pleasure of the board with regard to this?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we generate a letter of support for the Clinton Greenway Conservation Trust.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to develop a letter of support for the grant. There any discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed, motion's carried. Next item on the agenda is the Friends of Clinton High School Drama are requesting a donation. The Clinton High School Friends of Drama is requesting from local organizations to support their 2019 production of a high school musical that will be held in April. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, in the years past, we've given the drama club there $150, so I'd like to make a motion for $150.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion's made and seconded to grant the Friends of Drama organization $150 to support their latest production, which is a high school musical. Is there any discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed, motion's carried. We're all set, Fran. Fran Hodge from the Greenway Trust just came. If you'd like to say something, but I know you'd like to talk with us next meeting about your progress with the railroad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I appreciate your support on our grant application. That's one of the steps we feel like we need to go through before we move forward with an position, so, okay. If you've already voted on it.
It's all set.
You're so late.
Yeah. Well, you were 2 minutes late.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I don't want to cut you off, but,
Did I miss something?
well, it's not in the more detailed agenda.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
We're going to have a discussion.
We are. Okay. Thank you. Because I would have missed it because I'm going by the more detailed. At the last meeting, Mr. Connolly raised the issue of increasing the number of retail marijuana licenses that the town issues or that the town approves for the state to issue. So here we are, and I would say that that is open for discussion now, and I would ask Mr. Connolly to.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask if we could postpone this discussion in detail until the next meeting and request that the Economic Development Director and the Chairman of the Planning Board attend the meeting to advise us or give us their opinion on the concept of revising that bylaw.
Okay, if I hear no objection from the board, we
Fine with me.
can table that for tonight and
Yeah, that's fine.
The point being is
Reschedule.
we shouldn't be engaging this without having a conversation with
right.
people that have more experience in this than us.
And actually, what I was thinking, I think what Michael and I were thinking was that we would put it on there so we could say, we'd like to invite somebody in. This should be the
Right.
process.
And,
Okay.
and any other town officials that feel they have
Some concerns.
some concerns or support for the idea.
Okay, so Michael, that's what we'll do. Next meeting, we'll try to put it together.
Sure. Good.
Okay. All right, so where are we? Clinton High School, okay, so the Clinton High School class of 2020, the after prom event group have requested a donation, so this has been going on for quite a while, not since I was in high school. But it's an opportunity to have something for after the prom to give the kids an alternate to, I guess, do what we used to do, which I guess was bad. And I think it's very worthwhile. And so what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, in the years past, we've given $100 to the prom committee. I'd like to raise that to $150, just like we just gave the drama committee. So $150 donation from the Board of Selectmen for the prom committee, please.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to give $150 to the after prom committee donation group, or not the after prom event committee. There any discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed, motion's carries. MMA Annual Conference, Board of Selectmen Chair, that's me, would like to continue the discussion as for members to provide a briefing on the issues presented at the MMA Annual Conference in Boston. So how should we proceed? Should we have one person do a little presentation this week and someone not? I guess that's what I want. How do we proceed with this?
I think any of us that want to contribute, we should be given the opportunity to share things that we learned down
Well, do you
there.
want to do that tonight?
I'll start if.
Okay,
And it'll be a brief
all right.
overview. One of the meetings that I attended was regarding state and municipal finance, and I think, am I correct that the governor's budget is out now?
Yes.
Well, they were holding their cards very close to their chests, so they weren't divulging everything, they were just dropping hints. And the gist of what I learned while I was there was that they were conservatively optimistic going forward in the budget, that there would be no increases in local aid, but they were making some effort to support Chapter 70 aid for schools, and I assume that's what's come out. Chapter 90, they were basically level funding. They thought that was an achievement on their part. I think people in the group felt that that was a step back from what everyone was hoping for or expecting. But that was what they indicated, and I assume that's what the budget came out with. They also dispelled any notion that part of that education review was going to, in any significant way, address funding for charter schools, i.e. making the local school system suffer a burden to support the charter schools. They indicated that they weren't ready to do anything like that at the state level. That was the finance one. I did attend one on charters and charter review, and
Town charters, you mean?
town charters, yes. It was directed more to communities that had charters and were seeking to revise them, but some of the things that I picked up there were the title of town manager or town administrator is basically the distinction, or the difference is meaningless. You can have a strong town manager or a weak town manager, and basically what I had always been a supporter of the town having a strong town manager, and basically it doesn't mean, the title doesn't mean anything, and I think we've made a lot of progress over the years in creating a strong town administrator, and just having it clarified that the title didn't make that much difference was something I took from that seminar.
Uh-huh.
Charter, oh, the OPEB, was somebody else at the OPEB workshop?
I was there when I left, when I saw
You,
you.
okay.
So you were both at the OPEB workshop,
We both entered it, and.
and
it's-
somebody got kicked
yeah.
out. Okay.
But that worked the other way too, because we
No, I know.
both went to the marijuana one.
Oh,
and-
that's the one I
and
saw you.
got
No,
kicked
then
out.
I didn't go to OPEB.
Oh.
That's the one I saw you at.
All
I
right, so
kicked
I'm
you
the
out.
one that got
That's
kicked out,
right.
not you.
That's right.
Okay.
All right.
The OPEB seminar was extremely dry.
Shocker.
It didn't, it conveyed the impression that I already had, that there is no good answers. To address the issue, we have our Government Affairs Subcommittee working on the topic, and our first step is, this is partly a committee report, is where we received the auditor's report, and I think we asked to have it shared with the whole board, so we can all be equally as put to sleep. Yeah, trying to understand it, but the next step in that process would be to invite them, the auditor staff here, to try to educate. The original idea was the subcommittee, but I think it's important enough that the whole board should be educated as best we can be on the topic. I didn't learn a lot at the MMA conference regarding that topic, but other than it's pretty overwhelming. So that's it for now. Maybe I'll come up with something for the next meeting.
Is anyone else?
Mr. Chair, I'll get mine out of the way.
All right.
I wasn't, I went to 3 also, and I wasn't blown away by any of them, but there were, nuggets that I took from each. Regarding the marijuana update, it was, it's very much a work in progress, and at the end, they basically said, the law could be totally changed next year, but as far as working with what we have, the big thing that I took away from, since we're a bit ahead of the curve as far as under our current zoning, that we've got our 2 retail licenses filled, the point that they brought up that I hadn't thought of was that as far as the community impact fee, the 3%, in addition to the sales tax that we get, we're allowed to negotiate that 3% community impact fee, which is supposed to go toward services or things that are created by having these establishments in town. The point they brought up is that we are in the best negotiating position we're going to be in right now, but then in 5 years, we're going to be expected to show how we spent that money. So it basically pointed out the need for someone to be in charge of this. Not only that, but complaints, and it's a whole new industry that we're bringing into town. So it's something we might want to think of, especially if we're going to increase, potentially increase the number of retail establishments. That's just going to be more things to keep track of. So I don't know. It's something we should look at, I think, because in 5 years, if we can't show where we spent that money, then it's going to be a lot harder to negotiate a renewal of that for the next 5 years. As far as attracting and keeping people downtown, that was, I thought that'd be one of the winners. It was someone from New Bedford, someone from Beverly, and someone from Springfield. 2 of those communities have commuter rail stops. The third has a casino. So it basically turned into people bragging about their downtowns, which is something I'd love to do. The big thing that I took away from them is that the thing that, other than the casino, the success in those 2 and the other people who spoke were based on partnerships, whether it's with a school or a nonprofit or an arts organization or other communities. And I thought that was maybe something we could look at, returning Clinton to the center of this region, and having people look at this as a place where we're going out to eat, we're going to Clinton, we're going to shop, we're going to Clinton. So that, I think at some point we might have to look at who organizes those partnerships, and if we have the people on staff now who can do that. But I think, as I've said before, if we're not getting out ahead of these things, we're gonna be falling behind because there's other communities that have, have commuter rail stops or are closer to 495 who, have more assets to work with. We have to out-hustle them. So I wanna make sure that we have all the people we need to get that done. The other two funny quotes one's not funny, rooftops before retail, which is something I think, we can look at, is basically more people who live near your downtown business district, the more people will shop there. And I know we have limited resources to that, but filling the tops of those buildings, I think, will fill the bottoms. And the other thing they brought up was that you'd be surprised how excited people get to drink beer in the street. So basically just put a beer garden, everything, close off part of the street and let them wander around drinking, and people will come for miles. So I thought that was something, and certainly something I'd be willing to consider. The last, and I'll be quick, was boosting engagement in boards and committees. And again, that was, I thought, more about getting community members to volunteer. It ended up being more about getting people to run for office and about stipends and things like that. The one thing that I took away from there was that some communities successfully have inter-board meetings, similar to department head meetings, but for elected positions. And it made me think that, a lot of the times, unless I know someone personally on another board, I don't really know what they're doing other than, news reports or reports we get here. And maybe that's something we want to consider, a representative of our board, school committee, planning board, and to have a quarterly or a monthly get-together just to look at redundancies or compare frustrations, overlap, to share information. It seems like a pretty low-impact thing to do, and, I see nothing but good to come out of that. So those are the three things I took away from that, and if anybody has questions later, I'd be happy to share.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I passed over one other topic I'd like to
Okay.
hit on. I went to the public records workshop. I think, were you there? Somebody else was there.
I was there.
You were there?
I was at the public records one with you, and I was at the committee
Oh,
one with John.
Do you want me to leave the public records to
I'll do
you?
the public records one next week. How about that?
That's fine.
I've got three that I went to. Oh, well, I won't do the committee one
if it
because
came up with
Sean
anything
just
else.
did it.
Right.
But I will say this about the suggestion that once a quarter, representatives of the various boards get together and just update each other, I thought was a very good one.
Yeah.
And then they can go back to their various boards and update them, and maybe we could put that on the agenda for a future meeting. Maybe see about organizing something like that, once every 3 months.
People talk about small town politics, and I think one of the advantages of having a small town is that that's not too big of a climb for us. That information sharing should be easier for us because there are, it is such a tight-knit group. So, I'd be happy to help with that in any way I can.
So I'll do a report next week, next meeting. And so that's some of our activities down at the annual conference. The other thing that goes on down there that I just would tell the people about is they have a large conference area, well, not a conference area,
Trade
but a
show?
large,
Trade show?
large trade show where various vendors and state agencies set up booths, and you can go in and talk to them, and you get all sorts of pens and stuff. That can be very informative also. Next item on the agenda is goals and objectives discussion.
Excuse me.
First item on the agenda is downtown decorative streetlight project. Myself and Selectman Sargent last Wednesday met with the downtown group, and we went over, I would say, with a first draft of what the project engineer, the engineers who are doing the design study came up with. That was very extensive. Talked about new sidewalks down there, redoing the street, changing some of the site views, like at the intersection of Church and High, and also doing something about the corner, turning onto High Street from Union, coming down Union past the police station and making that right-hand turn. People are concerned that people make that turn at a very high rate of speed. And so we looked at that. We did not have a chance to discuss it a great deal because we ran out of time, but we are meeting again next Wednesday, I believe is at 6 o'clock, to discuss, go over it and discuss it some more. So that would be my report on the downtown decorative streetlight anything else to talk about? OPEB recommendations, you already covered them.
I touched on it there, we have it there, we also have the subcommittee reports. But I just, if you'll allow me, just briefly, it is, to me, a very overwhelming and significant issue facing the town, and addressing it properly is going to take significant effort on our part, aside from making an annual contribution to the fund. And we are going to need some expert advice on the best approach to take, but it's going to be multifaceted. It involves talking about reduction in benefits, reduction in services, increase in taxes, and it's going to take a combination of all those things to get this thing into a manageable format.
Okay, and just, Bill, for the sake of the people out there, OPEB stands for?
Other post-employment benefits. We have, the retirement accounts for the town are pretty well addressed, as in they're funded appropriately, but this is something that currently we pay as you go, because it's a cost that we can handle. But eventually, it's going to be 10, 20, 30 years out. It's not going to be supported be able to be supported annually, and we need to have an account set aside with enough revenue in it from earnings to make a significant impact on the cost.
And there's also a great contributor to this difficulty is the long-term health care costs, which the amount provided was staggering. It was truly staggering, and to the point that I questioned where it came from, and so that's why we should read that report, because it's quite a huge problem, and might almost be unsolvable. So we'll be talking more about that. On a
Mr.
lighter note,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
just to stress, while it doesn't absolve us of any responsibility, we don't have a monopoly on problems with this other post-employment
Right.
benefits. It's an epidemic, a municipal epidemic. So, again, that doesn't spare us any work ahead, but it's not something we stepped in alone. It's a problem across the state and across the country.
Right. Every town and city in the state are dealing with it. Anything on sidewalk survey and maintenance or increased citizens' participation? There being none, we'll move on to committee reports.
Mr. Chairman, just
Yes.
under old and news business, Michael has it in our packet. I would like the public to know that the Clinton Police Department has sent out a public information notice that all Massachusetts 911 call centers now have the ability to receive text messages through their 911 system. I just think that's a great feature in case people have an emergency, so
Thank you.
you can be able to text them.
Any committee reports? We just reported on the downtown decorative streetlight project. Anything else? There being nothing, that appears to conclude the agenda for this evening. We'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Motion's made and seconded to adjourn. Is there any discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you.
Keep it present.